This episode of the Moms Network is brought to you in part by DuPage Medical Group. We care for you.
Welcome to the Moms Network, a talk show focused on moms, kids, and family. Today, Erica, Lindsay, and I are joined by two guests, local mom Tess Cazzo and expert Dr. Catherine Gordon, an OBGYN from DuPage Medical Group, to discuss the topic of family planning. For some moms, family planning goes just as well planned. For others, it can be a challenging time filled with many ups and downs. Dr. Gordon, can you share a little bit more about your background and how you chose your field?
Yeah, I'm an OBGYN in DuPage Medical Group in Naperville, and I chose this field because I enjoy working with women in many different ways. As OBGYNs, we're lucky because we get to take care of patients in an office setting, but then, of course, deliver babies and do women's surgery. So it's very comprehensive throughout the woman's life.
Mm-hmm. And how long have you been in practice?
I've been here in Naperville for 4 years.
Okay. What's like the best part of your job?
Well, probably delivering the babies, although it depends on what time of day. And then I think just the bond that you make with your patients is so special.
I can imagine that.
It really, really is.
I can imagine, especially during that phase of life. But how did you all plan your family as far as timing of when you decided to have kids?
So I didn't get married until I was close to 29.
Okay.
I was just a couple months shy. So, there was that pressure of, gosh darn it, why did we meet each other so late in life, yet not late in life. And, he was in graduate school, so he had just started a graduate school program. I was teaching full time, but then there was sort of that, you see all around you people struggling, right? Mm-hmm. So I had a couple friends go through IVF. Mm-hmm. Well, what if that's us? So now the timeline goes longer and longer, so let's start. We did not have to go through IVF, but it did take us almost a full year, 11 months. Okay. Mm-hmm. And our doctor said, you're 31, we won't test you until you've tried a year. So sure enough, month 11, there we were. It was a lot quicker for my son when I was 35 the second time around. So for us, it was just the simple timing of when I met my partner, and then feeling a little bit of the pressure to rock and roll in case things did not go according to plan.
I kind of had this stuck in my head that I wanted to be done having kids before I was 30. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. I just made that up. There was no rhyme or reason to it. I just kind of always told myself that. So my husband and I met, I was in my early to mid 20s, and we were married in May of 2014. Our daughter was born in July of 2015. So thankfully it was easy for us, which I'm very thankful for. I have a lot of really good friends, like Erica mentioned, that have struggled, and that just breaks my heart. I'm thankful that it was a little bit easier for us. Mm-hmm. And we planned them, as best we could, two-ish. We ended up 2.5 years apart. I had a lot of friends that were pregnant after me and pregnant again the second time before me, 14, 15, 16 months apart. Mm-hmm. And I knew that I had absolutely no desire to be pregnant with an infant and then have a newborn with a very young toddler. I just couldn't imagine that. And so we aimed for that 2.5 years apart. So our kids are 2.5 years apart, and we like it. Mm-hmm. I always, when I meet people out and about it, out in the community, and I see kids that are the same age as mine, I think to myself, how do you like the age difference? How far apart are they? People who have a girl first and then a boy, I ask if they're friends. That's my worst fear, is that they're not going to be friends with each other, because they're 2.5 years instead of that, less than 2 years apart. And so it's kind of fun to picture what our family's going to be like as our kids grow up, and kind of think about that. It's good distance for us. It works for us.
Yeah. How about you, Tess?
Family planning did not come easy for my husband and I. We chose to wait a while just because we weren't ready, and we were enjoying being together and being married. Mm-hmm. And when we decided to have a family, it wasn't happening. Okay. And we were older, of course, at the same time, so battling Mother Nature, and just it wasn't working. And we went to a specialist, and we were told we had less than 1% chance to have a baby without medical assistance. Okay. So we were referred to IVF immediately, and if we chose to go with IVF, we would have up to about a 65% chance of conceiving. And my story is my son Ferris was born. He is my last embryo. We ended up having 7 eggs that were pulled and that were fertilized, and after genetic testing, we ended up with 2. My first transfer was a miscarriage, and my second transfer, my last embryo, is my son today.
Oh, wow. You know, there's so many different ways people become families. I know in our next segment we're going to talk about infertility a little bit deeper. But it is amazing how for some people they don't even think about it, and then some people really, really struggle. I know in my own practice I see moms to be that want to become parents, and they go through 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and I know how frustrating it is. It's like, this should just work, like
and it always seems to work for like I taught high school, so I had a lot of students who were pregnant right as I was 31 struggling to get pregnant, and so you're there going,
Yes.
you're 15 and 16 and oops, it happened, and you have someone happily married and with 2 secure careers, and it's not happening. And you wonder, what is the grand plan up there?
What do you see in your practice as far as age ranges for when moms are wanting to get pregnant? Do you see it being a little bit younger, with the understanding that as you get older it does get easier or get harder?
Definitely a trend towards patients being older, and I think that's the trend nationally. Women are delaying pregnancy for their careers, getting married later. So it definitely does bring up more of these fertility questions.
Sure. What's the optimal age for getting pregnant?
It's a tough question.
I don't know if I could say optimal age, because I would imagine that's a balance of social situation, your actual body,
health.
I will say definitely our physiology and our natural reproductive tendencies don't tend to line up with what we socially want these days.
A lot earlier, that your body kind of is set up for getting pregnant a little bit easier.
Some cutoffs that most fertility experts will say is that around age 33 is when we start to see that decline in fertility, when things seem to start to get harder. 37 is when it really gets harder to get pregnant.
And what about spacing? I know, Lindsay, you said yours are 2.5 years. I was 6 months, or my first son was 6 months old when I got pregnant, and so they were like 14 months apart. We were kind of like, Christopher, you learned how to walk, you get a baby brother. And I remember like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? And I was still nursing part-time, and so when Nick was born, I was still like night nursing Christopher, and then being a divorced mom, like trying to go to a museum or trying to go anywhere with 2 kids that close together. Like, you don't have like a 4-year-old that can really listen. So what do you find in your practice as far as spacing of
So definitely there are some recommendations on this. There's some literature. In general, the recommendation is to try to space your pregnancies, which would mean the interval between the birth of your baby and conceiving the next baby, to a minimum of 18 months. The ideal interval is 18 to 24 months
ding, ding, ding,
prevent
you did it.
complications. So it's actually interesting that we see an increased risk of pregnancy complications both for the infant and the mother when women get pregnant sooner than that. And it's a spectrum. The highest risk is when you get pregnant 6 months or less after the child is born. A lot of risks seem to go down at 12 months, but 18 seems to be the safest. And so that's actually what's recommended by organizations like the World Health Organization, Healthy People, the government project. So, but it's hard because, again, as women are getting older as they get pregnant, they feel like they can't take that time. So you may ask, what are the risks that are involved? Just briefly, closer spaced pregnancies, we see a slight increased risk of preterm labor and preterm birth, both for indications like high blood pressure and diabetes, and spontaneous preterm labor. And then we see an increased risk of maternal complications like bleeding. Finally, an increased risk of low birth weight in the babies. Having said that, it's not everybody.
We also want to touch on birth control.
For sure.
I was shocked. I always used a diaphragm. I just did through my pregnancy, and apparently I was like the dinosaur of birth control. Throwback. So,
How vintage.
And so I remember, like, I went back a couple years ago to go get a new one, and they looked at me like I had 3 heads. And finally, she's like, "Okay, well, I'll prescribe it." And I went to like 3 pharmacies. They're like, "We don't carry that anymore." They actually don't make them anymore. Really? So I was frustrated because it was for me a non-hormone. I don't love being on the hormones. It was kind of a pain in the neck. But so what is the most common now?
Overall, I'd say the birth control pill and the IUD.
Okay. Okay. Or vasectomy. Yay,
Well,
vasectomy.
The IUDs are becoming a lot more popular. You guys are probably aware that they've made a couple IUDs that are designed for young women who haven't had babies before, which is increasing the popularity.
Okay, and what's the difference between, like...
It's just smaller.
Oh, okay.
It fits into a little uterus.
You haven't had a head there.
Women as young as 15, 16 can get these IUDs if they've never had a pregnancy, and it's safe.
That's awesome. And is that a surgical procedure, an inpatient?
Great question. It's an office procedure.
It is.
It's kind of similar to your pap smear, a little bit more uncomfortable, but the uncomfortable part is about 15 seconds.
And they last for a number of years, right?
So the most popular IUD for young women right now is called Kyleena. It lasts for 5 years, but it's reversible. So if people don't like it, if they want to get pregnant, take it out anytime.
You can take it out anytime.
For women who have had babies, there's 2 options. Mirena lasts for 5 years, and Paragard is for 10.
And if someone that does not have children gets that and they have it removed, is there a longer period of time that normally they take to get pregnant because of the hormones? Or?
That's a great question. No.
Okay.
One of the IUDs has no hormones. That's the Paragard, the 10-year IUD. The little IUD and the Mirena have a hormone in them, but the hormone should go out of your blood within about 24 hours of removal. We don't see any impacts on fertility once it's removed.
Which is different than the pill, correct?
So actually, no.
No? Okay.
Same thing. When you stop a birth control pill, the hormone should go out of your blood within about 24 hours.
Okay.
And if your ovaries are going to do what they're going to do, they should start to make a follicle and ovulate right away.
Okay.
So I think when you hear about women who go off the pill and have an issue getting pregnant, the issue is probably more that the pill was masking any natural pathology that they had with their menstrual cycle, because the pill artificially gives you a period every month.
Right.
But they probably had something underlying.
Okay. And at what age are you not concerned about pregnancy anymore? Is it just after menopause for a period of time?
Yeah, technically, you cannot officially be sure that you're not going to get pregnant and you don't need contraception until you're menopausal. The official definition is no period for a year.
Okay.
So
we gotta think about it. Got a couple babies with moms that are like 57, right?
That's when vasectomy comes into play.
Exactly.
You never know.
Oh, well, on that note, we're going to wrap up. Thank you so much for coming.
It's a pleasure.
Every woman's journey to motherhood is different. Having a great support system and knowledgeable doctor on your side is always helpful. Thank you, Tess and Dr. Gordon, for joining us today. We'll be right back with more of the Moms Network. Stay tuned.
This episode of the Moms Network is brought to you in part by DuPage Medical Group. We care for you.